So this is our first diagram demonstration, and you are welcome to try it on your own, or if you want to follow me step by step right here, you certainly can. I'm okay with either one. So let's take a look at this example, which says Mr. Killy, wearing his old high school basketball uniform from 1982, addressed the group of baffled calculus students. So first thing is I'm going to look for is I'm checking out what I have here, and I've punctuated it already for you, so that helps a little bit. You can kind of see these commas here, which kind of separates this little structure wearing all the way to 1982. Because this ing doesn't have a helper with it, like Mr. Killy was wearing, that's another clue that this is not the main verb. My main verb is all the way over here, which says addressed. My sentence is Mr. Killy addressed the group of baffled calculus students. So let's start there. So I meant to turn it to black, but it turned orange. I'm just going to go with it anyway. All right, so here's Mr. Killy. I'm going to do Mr. A, if you're okay with that. My verb all the way over here is addressed. And my direct object is group. I know he's addressing the students, but we know it has to be outside of a prep phrase. So we'd say it's the group. It's a group of students. And would say that they are calculus students. So I'm going to put calculus on a flat line, everybody. Calculus is a great noun. I know you don't always like the class or it stresses you out, but it's a great, great subject. And lastly is this word baffled. I'm going to change my color here if that's okay. Let's go to a pretty little green. And so I want you to see that baffled ends in ed, but it's an adjective. It's describing the students. They're confused. They're baffled students. Well, baffled comes from the verb to baffle, to confuse. So it is a participle. So it comes down and over, and I'm going to take baffled, and I'm going to make sure that he touches both sides, that they're baffled. And this is a nice example of a participle. The other thing we do have is a participial phrase. This thing which says wearing his old high school basketball uniform from 1982 is all describing Mr. Killy, so it's describing a noun. But not only is it just be wearing, but it also turns into a whole phrase. So I'm going to build it here. Remember, once again, we're going to connect it back to the noun who's doing the action. So the students are the ones who were baffled. When it's a passive, it's weird. When it's a passive participle, the students, it's almost like saying the students were baffled is what you're really saying here. When it's a present participle, the subject's actually doing the action. Mr. Killy is the one who's wearing. All right, so here we're going to go down here and over with wearing. And he's wearing what? So now all of a sudden it just turns into a regular little sentence in a sense. Once it turns into a verb, it can have a direct object. So he's wearing a uniform. It is his uniform. It's an old uniform. It's a school uniform, but it's a high school uniform. That makes sense? It's because there's different types of schools, obviously. So it's a high school uniform. And I know look how long this thing is. It's obnoxious. It's a basketball uniform. So I'm going to do b-ball just because I'm running out of room. And it's a uniform from 1982. Let's see if I can squeeze that in here. There you go. Okay, so there is our answer to this mess. Whew, so we have a participial phrase, and we also have a single participle over here. So I want to make sure you picked up on those two. It is confusing. It can be because the easiest ones are the INGs because the INGs have to have helpers with them. And if they don't have a helper with them, then you're saying, okay, what is this thing? In this case, it's going to be a participle describing Mr. Killy. It's not a gerund. It's not serving a purpose of a noun. It's simply describing Mr. Killy. And the EDs can be confusing because some EDs are going to be your main verb, and then some EDs are actually your little participles. All right, let's move on. I'm going to show you an example how to do numbers 2, 3, and 4, but you can also try them on your own and come back and check out the answers.